May we now invite Kazuhiro Soda and Ruby Yang to come up on stage, please?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, thank you for coming. It's a full house tonight, almost. So we're going to open to the floor pretty soon. I just want to ask one question about how did you get the idea to do this film?
Okay. First of all, thank you for watching and this film. Well, I first there is a city called Paju, which is right across the border between North Korea and South Korea. And in Paju, in 2010 in 2010, they were planning to create a new film festival called DMZ Documentary Film Festival. And because of the location, they wanted to create a documentary film festival which deal with the theme of peace and coexistence. And they wanted to produce their own films. And they approached me to produce a 15-minute short documentary about peace and coexistence. And I almost turned it down because I do not work with theme first. I mean, you know, I try not to have anything in my mind when I make films, because if I have a theme first, you know, I would be kind of directed towards the theme and pick whatever fits to the theme and I can't discover anything new. So I almost turned it down. I also was wondering if I want to make a film about peace or coexistence, maybe I should go to like a war zone, like somewhere. But I didn't want to do that. So I almost turned it down. But then, when I went to Okayama, my wife's hometown, and stay with my father and mother-in-law, I watched my father-in-law feeding some stray cats. Actually, that's my father-in-law. He was feeding some stray cats, and I felt so, I don't know, I had this urge or desire to capture it and preserve it because it was so nice, the moment. And then I noticed there was a group of cats, like 5 cats, and they form a community. But then there's another cat which is kind of dirty and kind of far away from the group, and he, while I was rolling, he took the food and ran away, which is the first scene of the film. And when I accidentally shot that scene, and my father-in-law said, "That's a thief cat," and he is feeding him in a little distant place. And I immediately thought about, oh wow, the festival from Korea, South Korea, wanted me to make a documentary about peace and coexistence. What if I made a film about the community of cats, whether they can coexist together or not? So I was curious, you know, how they can, you know, work it out between them, or maybe they won't work it out. So yeah, immediately, like, this thief cat looked like North Korea, and so I started shooting, and then I became interested in the work of my father-in-law. And also, my father-in-law works with mother-in-law, so I started shooting with my mother-in-law as well. And then she took me to Mr. Hashimoto's place, 91-year-old, a gentleman. And when I met him, I thought there was nothing to do with the theme of peace, but then he was smoking a cigarette, which was peace. And I didn't plant that, It's not my plug-in. It's just, it was there. And so, yeah, everything everything happened by accident, and I captured everything. And yeah, that's how it came about.
So for most of you, Mr. Soda, he does observational film, which he doesn't do. He has like 10 commandments, have rules that he doesn't do research. That way he discovers things as he shoot, and that's his style. And so earlier we have an interview with him, and he talked about it, and so it's very interesting. Can you maybe explain to some of the audience your method?
Right. Well, I used to make documentaries for TV, and especially for NHK, Japanese Public Network. And when I made TV programs, I was required to do a lot of research before shooting, and I had to do a lot of meetings with the characters or subjects, and try to find out the information. What kind of scenes I can shoot, and what kind of scenes I cannot shoot. And I was required to, based on those information, I had to write detailed scripts. Which contains information like a shot list or a narration, or it has beginning, middle, and end, and the producer has to approve it. And after approval, I'm finally allowed to go out and shoot. But if you do that, it becomes kind of predictable. You know already what kind of film it's going to be, and if you see something contrary to the script, you feel kind of puzzled, like should I shoot it or not? Because if I shoot it, my script will collapse. And also, when you see something, the reality is much more interesting than the script. And if you go out and shoot the reality, you see something more interesting, and you shoot the interesting stuff. And then, but you come back to the editing room, then producers complain, why you didn't follow the script. But that's really strange. Documentary is about learning something from the reality, and but these institutionalized documentaries, filmmaking, tend to be too close-minded. So gradually, I felt frustrations, and also which led to my determination to make documentaries in my own way, which is the opposite of TV filmmaking. So I have 10 commandments to follow, my own rule. One is that I shouldn't do any research about the subjects. And number 2, no meetings with the subjects. Number 3, no scripts. Number 4, shoot alone. Number 5, I forgot, but but I have 10 commandments like that. And then number 10 is number 8 is like no narration, no background music, titles to explain the situation, because I want the audience to observe what's going on too. And number 10 is pay for the production yourself, because
that's the toughest.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, I don't accept any investments or money from the TV stations, because then I have no freedom. So I usually my policy is to create the film using our own money, and after completion, I sell it to distributors, and I get the box office percentage of box office, and use some money to live and then to make another film. And this is my 7th film. No, Peace is my 3rd film, and I have a new film called Oyster Factory, which is at the Hong Kong International Film Festival, which will be screened tomorrow at 9 p.m. If you have time, please check it out. That's my 7th film, and I've been doing this for 10 years now. So that's how I keep making films here.
That's really amazing. It's not easy. So, a really courageous filmmaker. So I think we should take some questions from the audience.
Right.
It's a good opportunity to ask filmmaker. Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Cal Wong. Just really fascinating hearing about your observational style and how you come about with a film or a story. I guess my first question is, do you film a lot of things which don't eventuate into anything?
Right. Actually, I've never had that kind of experience. Like, I never abandoned the project unless there's only one case which the subjects, characters refused to continue. That I had to abandon. But I've never abandoned the project only because it wasn't interesting. Whatever I started shooting ended up becoming a film. My belief is that there is nobody who's not interesting in this world. Everybody's living, everybody has drama. If you look at them closely. That's why I call it observational film. I believe in the power of observation. It's not about being distant. It's about looking and listening. Many people misunderstand it. When I say observation, it's not about being distant and being separated. It's not about that. It's about looking and listening. And if you look and listen to anybody, I think anybody can be a character in the film, or main character of the film even. And so that's my theory, and I've been proving it actually.
But you do have ideas in mind, though. For example, Oyster, you're thinking about fishermen. It's about the status of Japanese fishermen, also the dyeing industry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I have a seed in my mind. Yeah, of course. Yeah, but I try not to be stuck about my initial idea. With Oyster Factory, initially my interest was in the local fishermen in Ushimada, which we stay a lot, because fishermen are aging. They are all 70 or 80 years old, and nobody succeeds their business. It's like a dying business, and I wanted to find out why it has to be a dying business. I mean, everybody eats fish, but why it has to die as a business? And so that was my seed, and I became friends with one of the fishermen, and I asked him if I can come in with a camera, and he said yes. And that was a summer, but in November I had some time, so we came with a camera. Then went to see him, and I realized he had an oyster factory, which I didn't expect. And there was the oyster sharking season was just beginning, so he invited me to the oyster factory. So so I accidentally started shooting Oyster Factory, and I have a film. So that's exactly how it goes with my films all the time. You know, Peace, I was initially wanted to make a film about cats. Then one thing led to another, and I ended up making 75 minutes feature-length documentary rather than 15-minute short documentary about cats.
It's basically about life, the chances in life. It's like unpredictable, but
Right.
you start observing, things come to you.
Yeah, I think so. And as long as you are open to what you see and what you listen, and then you have a film, I think. And if you are rolling the camera at the time, that's important. If you miss it, if you miss the moment, you don't have a film. But if you are rolling the camera when something happens, you have a film. Yeah.
The thing is with like observational filmmaker, they shoot a lot. Then you have to really choose in editing. That's the
Right.
tough part.
Yeah. And in the editing too, in my commandment, I have a commandment which says, do not set up a theme at the beginning of the editing too. That's one of the commandments. So how do I do it? How do I edit the film? First, I watch everything. I mean, everything I shot. In terms of piece, I think I only shot like 30 or 40 hours. But I watched everything, and then I log everything. And then I start editing the most important scenes, I thought. Like, for example, in this case, I think I started editing the last scene with Mr. Hashimoto when he started talking about World War II, which I never expected he would talk about. I mean, it was by accident. Oh, by the way, yeah, I'm glad I didn't do any research because if I did a research beforehand with Mr. Hashimoto and had a meeting, maybe he talked about it while my camera was not rolling. That's another reason why I don't do any research. And by the way, for example, and coming back to editing, I edited that was the first scene I edited. And then I started editing other scenes which were interesting to me. And after a while, you have like 20 to 30 good scenes which interest me, right? Then I started putting them together in one sequence. And usually the first cut is so disappointing that I want to die. It's so disappointing because it doesn't have any logics. Like, you know, it's a random assembly of the scenes. But then my real battle begins from that moment. Like, I call it puzzle. Like I kind of shuffle them around and try to find the best order. And also I add or take away scenes. And it takes a lot of time. Usually it takes about 10 months to edit one film. But Peace, I did it in 4 days.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know why. That's why I called it extra. Observational film extra. That's why it says it's not in number, because it felt like it came to me as a gift. I didn't really make it. I don't feel I made it. So yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Earlier we talk about willing to throw away things. I think as a filmmaker or people beginning to make film, they don't want to throw away things. And the same way with myself, I always throw away the best thing first.
Oh, yeah.
And then you start missing it, then you miss it, then you put it back in. Do you do the same thing?
Well, when I feel the editing is not going well, sometimes there is a good scene which obstruct the energy of the whole film. And in that case, I try to take it away. And when I take it away, I said to myself, it's only temporary. Because if you decide to take it away permanently, then you can't do that. I mean, it's so hard to do that. So I always talk to myself, temporarily, let's remove it and see what happens. And if the film becomes better, then I feel I have no problem throwing that away, actually. But until you find that out, it's so tough.
It's very difficult. I know that because I also edit my own film. It takes longer because you need time to have the process and then look at it back and forth, because once you get close to it, you get so disappointed sometime, or there's no logic, and then you don't see the flaw. So it's very tough. I know you shoot a lot, you shoot yourself one person, and then you edit.
Right.
That's a tough role.
Yeah, but I enjoy that. I enjoy the process. I think, I'd rather want to suffer than giving the film to somebody to edit.
Of course, because you understand it better than anyone else. So we take more questions from the floor. Any questions?
Over there.
Oh, there. Here. Next.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this film. I really enjoyed it. I guess my question is, and I'm not sure if it's a relevant one, but when I was watching your film just now, I made an observation that you tend to use a lot of very close-up shots when you were shooting people. I'm just wondering if that's a deliberate choice, and is there any reason behind that? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it's all spontaneous, right? I mean, when you zoom into somebody's face, or when you zoom into somebody's hand or whatever, it's all spontaneous. Like it's an immediate choice, immediate decision. And when I'm shooting, I always try to observe what's going on in front of me. And when I make a discovery, or when I notice something, I try to translate it into a film language. For example, when I saw Mr. Hashimoto smoking a cigarette or peace, if I stayed in a long shot, I wouldn't communicate my discovery, right? So it's a natural choice for me to get a close-up of the box. So that's my logic. I always, when I'm shooting, I'm always in two different modes. First, I'm observing what's going on in front of me, and when I notice something, I try to translate into a film language. Yeah, that's how I do it.
Good. You have a question? This from the front person.
Thank you, Mr. Soda, for your movie. I like your film because
Thank you.
Yeah, when I watched this, I could not stop thinking that I am alone now. So when I watching the film, I could not stop thinking that what if I am still alone when I'm getting old, just like the Mr. I forgot his name.
Mr. Hashimoto.
Yeah. And my question is, during your shooting this movie, what's the thing that most surprised you? It's totally most surprised you.
Most surprising thing?
Yeah, it's totally different. What I was thought before, what I was my expectation before. Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, there are many things which surprised me. One is that when he started talking about the experience as a soldier, I had no idea. So I was really surprised and also thrilled, actually. when I was shooting it. Also, what was surprising that was my mother-in-law was trying to get out of the parking lot, and she was complaining about the healthcare system, or I mean the system. And then I noticed from the radio, Prime Minister's speech was talking about exactly the same thing. But so I was hoping that she would make some comments. Actually, that radio, I didn't put that, in the editing. I mean, it's naturally there. I mean, many people ask me like, you put that in the soundtrack, right? No, I didn't. It's by accident. Prime Minister was talking about it on that moment, and I was hoping that my mother-in-law was making some comments about Prime Minister's speech. Then she didn't make any comments, and I was kind of disappointed when I was shooting it. But then when I was in the editing room, I felt the opposite. It's interesting. It is interesting that she doesn't make any comments. They are talking about it, the same thing, but they are so disconnected. They are so distant, and that was the discovery I made during the editing. So that's why I put it in the film. And another discovery or surprising thing was that how cats deal with a stranger, like thief cat. They just accept it. That's it. That was surprising. I mean, we never do that in human being. We always have borders. We have laws. We have international laws and stuff. And even if you want to be friends, if you have a bad history or conflicts, it's not easy, right? But with cats, they can do it like that.
We're talking about discovery, I think. So in editing, you just continue making your discovery, because when you're shooting, sometimes you're too concentrating on something. Sometimes you don't see something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. While I'm shooting, I'm thinking about many different things, right? I mean, like I operate my camera and also record the sound as well. So I need to think about the sound, also the picture. I need to be stable, and when I move the camera, I need to kind of make it smooth. And also I need to adjust the focus and also aperture and everything. So even if I try to observe what's going on in front of me, it's not always, perfect. So there are many things I discover for the first time during the editing. In the editing, you can watch the same footage over and over again. So yeah, so I have many chances to to observe again the footage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because the person expression, when you also put it all together, you discover the character.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes you feel that these two scenes, let's say scene A and scene B, I thought it had nothing to do with each other, but then if you put them together, some meaning occurs. With this film, for example, I didn't know how to connect the story of cats and the story of Mr. Hashimoto and the other people. I didn't know that. But then in the editing, when I put them side by side, I felt some meaning, like I felt some connections between these two stories. And I think that kind of, it's like a chemical reaction, right? It's like if you put put them in this order, blah, blah, blah. It's like an experiment, like a chemical experiment. If you put them together, oh, wow, it becomes a different chemical. Like
Editing is always a very good way to discover, and
Right.
then that's also become a new logic. The film become have also take on new meaning. So
That's right,
it's very-
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, any question regarding editing and production?
Over there.
Hi, thank you for the film. I enjoyed it very much. I have two questions here. The first question is about, because you just now raised the radio scene in the film. I want to ask, there must be some political input in that film in certain way. So do you expect this film will bring any political implication in the future, or like generally speaking, do you expect your films, your other documentaries will bring any like societal implication, or how do you define the value of your films?
I see.
Yeah, and and also have the second question, because you said you don't have a specific theme when you edit the film. So how do you define a film then? Does it have to be a story within the film? Yeah, this is my question. Thank you.
Okay. Political implication. Well, human beings are political beings, I think. You know, if you are living, you are already a political being, I think. You know, because we're a social animal, and so when you make a film about people, well, even cats, it's always about politics. It's inevitable, but I don't try to. My aim is not to make any social changes through my films. I'm not using my films as a tool to make any social changes, because it's not the role of the film, I think. The role of the film for me is to depict the world as I see it. It's a depiction, and it's from my point of view. So it's a very subjective depiction of the world. And my aim is to depict the world as I see it and share it with the audience. And what I want to convey is not a political message, but it's more like an experience. Like in the case of Peace, I met these bunch of cats, and also my parents-in-law and their or Mr. Hashimoto or other people. That was my personal experience, right? And I wanted to recreate my experience in a cinematic way so that I could share it with the audience. So I wanted to convey my experience to the audience so that the audience can kind of feel as if they met these cats and people. That's my purpose, I think. And my films can have some impacts to the political situation as a result, but it's always as a result. It's not something I'm aiming for it. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Oh, about story?
About the story.
Yes, second question.
What was the question again?
Yeah, just how do you define a film? Like, does it have to be a story within a film?
How do I define the film? Well, it doesn't have to be a story, I think. It could be a scenery, it could be a sound, it could be the color, it could be... a film can capture light and also sound, right? So it could be anything, actually. But at the same time, human beings is animal, which try to understand the world in the storytelling. So I'm also an animal like that. So in my case, I tend to find a story within while I'm filming and also while I'm editing. But it's not necessarily the definition of the film, I think. Definition of the film is about physical reality, I think, you know. Whatever which reflects lights and also whatever which emits sound, which emits sound can be recorded on film. It could be the subject of the film. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Hello, Mr. Soda. I'm
Hi.
Margaret from GMSC. Since you mentioned about editing techniques earlier, so I have an editing question want to ask. For observational film, for observational style, actually, it is really hard to predict what will happen.
That's right.
So during the process of your editing, what will you do to create the conflicts in the film, and meanwhile control the rhythm of your storytelling? And another question will be, what will be your next film about?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you never know what happens. So, yeah, it's like an old try and error, I think. You know, in the case of Peace, I didn't do much try and error. It only took me 4 days to edit this film, which is a miracle. But usually it takes several months to figure out the best possible order of the scenes and also what to include and what not to include. And it's always a struggle, and it's always a try and error. And Lars von Trier, one very famous film director, their policy in the editing room is that don't discuss, just try. That's their policy, and it helps me a lot because when I have a problems about the editing, we often want to discuss it, like in my head, like why should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? No, because blah 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 blah. But that's no use. You just want to try and see what happens. Yeah, so that's how I do it, I think. Yeah, and then my next film.
Next film, yes.
Yeah, next film. Actually, with Oyster Factory, I was planning to shoot for 3 weeks in Ushimado, but then I was only allowed to shoot at the factory for 1 week, and I had to stop shooting. So I had two more weeks to shoot something, and I thought I just had a vacation. But then when I was walking around with the camera, I met some interesting people. So I started shooting them, and that's my next film.
So what are there? What is there in
Actually,
occupation?
yeah, one of them is an 86-year-old fisherman who fishes alone. He's been fishing for 70 years, and his back is bent like this, like he walks like this, and I was afraid to be on his boat, but then as soon as he goes out in the sea, he becomes like so, I don't know, so alive, and I mean, I was totally wrong, so yeah, he would be one of the characters, I think, and also there's another character who will be important in this film. she's like 84 years old, woman, lady, always in the village, like, I don't know, like, she's always there.
An official mayor.
Yeah. And she's so interesting. She wants to take us to everywhere. And I followed her around everywhere. And she was really interesting. So she will be my, the other main character, I think, yeah.
It will be one film or two films.
One film, I think. I don't know, but I don't know. Because
You're
you
still
never
making
know.
discovery.
You never know. Yeah, I thought I was combining them with the Oyster Factory movie and put them together as a one film. But then when I was editing Oyster Factory's part, I realized, oh, this will take at least 2 hours, which ended up 2 hours and a half, right? It's a 145-minute film. And so I decided I should make 2 films out of it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a gentleman over there. 2 more questions. 2 more questions.
Hello, Mr. Soda. Thank you very much for the film.
Thank you.
I noticed that in the sound, there are certain parts of the film where ambient sound seemed to have been locked out, and there was just a focus on certain, like the squeaking of the wheelchair's wheels. I don't know if first question is what the intention is, and second, in your editing, do you ever go back and dub sound effects just to bring out certain ideas that you might have?
I have never put any sound effects from a library or anything. I've done like I've used some sound which I recorded on site in a different day or different place, or I've done that, but I've never used any library sound before. I mean, I could, but I don't. And sound, did you? I mean, I wasn't sure what you meant by.
There were certain sounds that seemed to have been enhanced, and the ambient sound was sort of not there.
Okay. Can you be more specific? Which scene do you remember?
Thank you. Well, one of the scenes was when the young boy was being pushed, the wheelchair, the wheel was squeaking loudly, and I don't hear, let's say, other kids or other people, any background sounds. And also, I think in some of the situations, like when Mr. Hashimoto, was it Mr. Hashimoto? Was waiting for the car. There was a lot of specific motoring sounds.
Right. I see. Well, the first scene you mentioned, I didn't really manipulate anything. It was as it is, actually. I recorded as you heard. Yeah. Then the second part you mentioned, I raised the level of the sound while Mr. Hashimoto was waiting for the car, because I felt he was very vulnerable while waiting alone for the car, and I wanted to enhance that feeling or my point of view by raising the level of the sound, which is kind of almost violent. I felt like this motor, but I didn't put additional sound from somewhere else. I was just raising the level a little bit so that you hear more distinct noise from the street.
I think what you did with that scene when Hashimoto was waiting for the car, I felt that, it's like as if he's going to be run down or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I felt. Yeah.
Okay, one last question.
Over there.
Hello, thank you so much for being such a good movie.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is that I'm just being curious, what are the other scenes that you took away during the editing? Because you just say it just took you 4 days for the editing. So what are the other scenes that are missing in this movie? Or is there any particular scenes that make you feel struggle during the editing? And also, the second question is, do you recommend a fresh filmmakers to follow the style of how you shoot? Because if you do not have a sit in mind, or if you do not do any research, I feel so hard. And I think as a fresh filmmakers is usually it's easy to get lost along the way. So what would you recommend? Thank you.
Yeah, the second question, that's a tough one. I don't know. I mean, it's I think you wanna probably as a starter or as a beginner of the documentary as a beginner of a documentary filmmaking, you want to try many different things, I think, and see if it fits to you or not. My 10 Commandments is only for me. I mean, it fits me. It fits my character. It fits my experiences. It fits my physical condition or knowledge. But it's not necessarily good for somebody else, right? So I don't know if I should recommend it to anybody or not. And for you as a beginner, I think you should try many ways to make a documentary. And some methods obviously doesn't work for you, and some methods might fit you. And if you find out what fits you best, you become a filmmaker. So yeah, again, it's a trial and error, I think. For me, the experience of making TV documentary was really valuable in a sense that it gave me an opportunity to try something that doesn't fit me. Because I hated the way I was forced to make. I got the energy to do the opposite. So it was fortunate for me to be forced to do something I didn't want to for a while. I suffered, of course. I didn't feel comfortable doing that, but while doing that, gradually, I got this urge to do the opposite. Otherwise, I don't think I was able to find my way of documentary filmmaking. And the first question,
what did you cut of the scenes
from in this film? Yeah. Almost none, actually. Of course, I've cut. I shot 40 hours of footage, and it's 75 minutes long. So there were many scenes which were shortened, but not many scenes which I entirely cut, actually. Yeah.
So you took the essence of almost all the
I think so. Yeah. I think so. That's how I remember. I didn't really maybe a few scenes with some users of my father's service. Maybe a few people I didn't use at all, but that's it, I think.
Also, shooting animals
Right.
take a long time to wait for the right moment. So that
Sure.
was probably the reason why there's hours.
Right.
Yeah.
But these cats, they don't feel comfortable with me. They only trust my father-in-law. So whenever I try to approach them, they just like run away. So that's why it's always with my father-in-law when I'm shooting with the cats. So yeah. So actually, I didn't really waste too much time capturing cats because it's almost impossible.
Well, anyway, I think this is it for the evening, and thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming and sharing the film and have very much insight into your documentary filmmaking. And I think I want to conclude it by two things you said is by listening and observing life, and that's the best way to be a filmmaker or choose the career in maybe in being a journalist or a reporter. But that's the best way.
Yeah, I think so. No matter what kind of method you take, if you don't forget about looking and listening, I think you could make a good documentary, I think.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much for coming.
And thank you.
Do you have something to conclude?
Yeah, I want to take a selfie with everybody. You laugh, meaning you probably noticed that I put it up on Facebook with the audience. Like I always take selfie with the audience and. Well, this is a very vast. So if you could kind of gather in this part, is it possible? Yeah, maybe center. Yeah.
Dim the front light, please。有啲背光因為，所以難影。Okay.
Okay. Everybody make a peace sign.
Yay. Thank you so much.